Uh, Hello and welcome to our Why pitch, a startup pitch at Soularize 2021. We have a great group that's coming in, and we're so excited about having you here. Thank you so much for joining us. We have 3 of our 4 advisors. I guess Shane is an advisor too, but we have 2 of the 3 advisors with us. And in a moment, we'll be introducing them. Elan Babchuck is with the Glean Network out of Manhattan. I have been through his START program. It is amazing and wonderful. He works with Interfaith ideas. He's a rabbi, but it's an incubator. They started off with kind of working just with rabbis, and Elan and I hooked up a number of years ago and said, what if we did this with another group? And so I was able to invite a number of people, and we expanded it to have a number of others with us. So if you want, you can go to gleannetwork.com and find out a little bit more about him. And we'll also be doing some webinars in the near future for those in the startup industry that want to know, how to create a pitch, and Elan will be participating with that as well. So very excited about that. And he just has the heart of Soularize as well. I want you to know that when we're picking our advisors, we're not looking for the big name, we're looking for the big heart. And the other 2 big hearts that we have with us here are Danielle and Charles. And if we could just start off, and Danielle, maybe you could share a little bit about you and your journey here. So
yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, and it's great to meet you all. So I'm Danielle Goldstone. I've spent a couple of decades in the sort of global social entrepreneurship, social innovation space, working with and for social entrepreneurs, primarily with the organization Ashoka, which is a leader in this field. And one of the things that I have done for Ashoka for many years is help select people for the Ashoka Fellowship, which is a fellowship for the world's leading social entrepreneurs. But in that 2 decades of work, I noticed that faith communities weren't often at the table. So I have started an initiative called Innofaith, where we're seeking to inspire and engage people in communities of faith to basically innovate, collaborate, and develop solutions to help humanity and our planet thrive. We're trying to build bridges between faith communities and the world of social innovation, basically so that as faith communities, we can find ways to collaborate across our traditions and use our wisdom and assets to help address some of the world's complex challenges. I think we spend a lot of time in faith communities talking about exercising our moral courage, and which is super important. It's also, I think, important to figure out how to unleash our creative courage as well. And so that's what we want to do at Innofaith. We are both multi-faith, so open to people and institutions of any faith or no faith, and also interfaith, meaning we're intentionally seeking to build connections and collaborations between and among faith communities and beyond. So thanks for having me, Spencer.
Absolutely. And Danielle and I actually met when she was working with Ashoka and doing some research on that. And so she has always been ahead of the curve. I've loved it. It's wonderful. And now Charles Lee with Ideation. Go ahead, Charles. Thanks for being. And again, we've known each other, I don't know how long, but a long time.
For a while now. Well, good morning or afternoon, everyone. Such an honor to be here. My name is Charles, and I lead a company called Ideation, and we focus on 2 big buckets of activities. One is strategic clarity. So we do work with a lot of different brands of all type of sizes, from Fortune 50 companies to startup entrepreneurs. And what we do is we provide strategic clarity around strategy and how to really grow and scale a concept, a product, a brand. And we also have a creative team in-house. So we do a lot of support and how to execute that smart brand execution, not just design, but activating new brands into new spaces and new markets. So we've worked for about, I don't know, 13, 14 years now with all different types of groups. And every so often we do get to work with faith communities or people of faith. That really excites us. We've worked with both some of the leaders of the Jewish community to archbishops to pastors of the Protestant faith. And so we've worked in multiple spaces from tech to everything from clean fuel, clean energy, to legal, to automotive, just kind of across the board. And more recently, in recent years, probably the last 3-4 years, the majority of work has touched impact. And so we enjoy that as a team. And more we feel like we're hoping to get to a place where 100% of our clients really create some type of tangible impact in the world. And so that's the space we work in. In the startup space, I'm also investor of many different startups. And then our company gets sort of loaned out to startups by venture capital groups in their portfolio, companies in their portfolio, to help them kind of accelerate or kind of scale the work more quickly. So this is a space I love. And I think entrepreneurs are uniquely positioned to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. So I'm excited to kind of engage all of you through Soularize.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate that. And just so you know that in the last probably 5 years, there's been quite a bit of attention on the idea of what's happening in the kind of faith, social entrepreneur movement, to the point where now I'm actually participating, along with Lawrence, who's on the call, with a Ashoka Faith Initiatives group. There are 10 of us from around the globe that they have chosen to kind of pull together and work with the initiatives. So there is huge traction right now. And it has been the last 5-7 years probably that it has really started to move forward. In fact, it's been probably almost 6-7 years ago that I was invited to speak to the Lean Startup conversation by Eric Ries in San Francisco. And it was, quite honestly, the tagline was Lean Faith. And they were asking back then, what does it look like to integrate lean methodology into the idea of what faith communities could be doing? They said, hey, it had worked with government, it had worked with medical, worked with nonprofits. What about the religious sector? And so it was really wonderful, even back then. But I'm telling you, and that's probably about the time Danielle and I had engagement, because Ashoka had seen that that was happening. That's when Elan had been kind of starting with the Glean Network. So it has not got critical mass in some ways yet. But I'll tell you, I think we are at the tipping point, which means I think you are right at the crest. I live at the beach, so I want to tell you we're in for quite a ride. And even if you've never surfed before, you may fall off the board, but you can body surf into the wave, and and we'll go crazy. And I think, in a sense, with Elan, Charles, and Danielle, we got a couple of really great lifeguards for us to help us find our way. So it is really exciting. I want you to know that you are really at the cutting edge. In a lot of ways, as people have looked back at Soularize 20 years ago, we had a Native American potlatch. I co-founded a spiritual experiences film festival called DMA that was in the EMP there, the Experience Music Project. We had tons of kinds of things, and people kind of look back at that and go, wow, that really was a tipping point also. And I think Soularize is a pop-up event this year actually is going to be one of those places where we look back and go, you know what? That's really where arts kind of had a new resurgence as kind of the banners of the people who moved forward, and because I think the arts always lead into it, but it really is the sustainability of startups that move us beyond just a conversation or participation in as a spectator, but really in the creators. And I think, I know this has probably been done 1,000 times in other settings or whatever, but for some reason right now, people are feeling like there's energy around this as something of a beginning, something of a start. And I am so glad that you are with us and are considering, if not already, many of you have already even put up a startup pitch. And so we'll be explaining a little bit more about that. So, Charles, if you might just kind of help us think through the idea of kind of within the context of startups and even kind of the faith idea, Soularize and such with that. Yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking back probably about 15 years ago. I know back then I was probably a little bit more active in my background is more of the Protestant faith. And during that time, I think there were a lot of us who saw the future kind of emerge through everything through social and technology. And we just felt like there weren't enough mechanisms through which we could express our entrepreneurialism. And so many of us just kind of spun off and did our own thing. And within our circle of extended friends, we were able to birth brands like Tom's and Charity Water. And it was really a lot of us were really motivated by faith. And but there wasn't a framework of thinking about it, really. I think at that point, we're just excited that you had the rise of technology. And I know it seems kind of silly that the internet hasn't been around that long because it's such an integral part of our lives. And I was hosting conferences around the country, bringing in corporate leaders from brands, a lot of the leading brands out there into the same space as nonprofit leaders. And because at that time that made sense. So Ashoka was a big part of a lot of our early conferences, and everyone was kind of excited to work with each other. So to see it now today, where there seems to be more open conversations about how various interfaith conversations and faith streams are starting to think about entrepreneurship as a viable, whether you call it a ministry or whatever it's called, whether nonprofit or for-profit, is super exciting for me. Because I feel like we were having these conversations way back when, and it's good to see a little bit of catch up and innovation. And so a lot of us are actually going back and engaging conversations like this one that we thought would never happen. So in that sense, as far as timing, I think this is really good timing. And to see even the Vatican right now, they have something called the Global Solidarity Fund, which is a massive fund designed to really fund entrepreneurs in a lot of developing countries around the world, but they're intentionally investing dollars and capital. Same thing you're seeing with what the UN is doing, as well as the Gates Foundation. There are a lot of these exciting things, and they are not necessarily directly opposed to necessarily faith groups engaging that. So I think there is a ton of not only just funding opportunity, but timing wise, people are trying to figure out how to do impact. And then on top of that, we have lots of, we work some with family offices around the world, and a lot of them are looking for solid impact projects that make sense for them, because we're seeing one of the biggest transition of generation wealth within family offices ever. And so these older leaders of these various, whether private family groups or networks of families, are transitioning literally billions of dollars. They want to make sure their values translate as well. And so we're working with a lot of different transitional projects like that as well. And so I think as far as timing, if you have a heart to actually execute on an idea that can make some type of difference in the world, I think eventually you can come across people who may help you actually get there. Now, with that being said, the flip side is a lot of great ideas die. And sometimes it's not even the idea. And so I also want to be realistic that being an entrepreneur is, and some of you probably have done it in multiple spaces, is probably one of the hardest things you will do. And it comes with great sacrifice. I don't think our company would have gotten off the ground without my wife and I putting in all of our life savings to try to figure this out. So I don't want to sugarcoat to say this is going to be super easy and people are going to just give you money, because it's money still, or they're going to give you support or platform network. So Soularize, I think, is a really good environment to test out some ideas and see if it has legs, or if you already have an idea that's already working, maybe a great platform to connect you to opportunities. So there's nothing promised up front. But one thing we can guarantee is it's meant to be a safe environment in which we can explore together, because I think all of our hearts is to do good in the world. And so as long as that's our North Star, I think we'll be okay. So I'm excited to participate, and whatever I could do to help you think about any of those aspects of developing it and taking it to market or getting funding, those kinds of things, gladly provide input where I can. It's good to be here.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it. We're also doing pitches in the area of workshops and arts. And a couple of weeks ago, we did with Barry Taylor, who's the curator of arts. And it was interesting, just as Charles is talking about, the same heart is kind of coming through. And it's really not necessarily the content. We want great content, and we want to help you create your content and make it even better. But it really is the community that we want to kind of develop here, because one of the things that's always said is that a lot of investors, a lot of groups that support each other, they tend to not look at just the one idea you're coming with. A lot of times they come in and look for the person, because they're not many times investing in the one idea. Because actually the idea you have right now might not even be your best idea. Your next idea might be your best idea. And so it's that relationship that really builds, so that the wonderful thing you're working on now is amazing, and we want to work together with it. But we also are thinking about, what's the next thing? And maybe not even the thing you do alone, but do with another person you even meet through this, or meet, down the road. So it is the kind of the content that you'll create in the pitch, but it also is really the community. The other thing we want you to know is that as you put up these pitches, they're not meant to be in stone. Charles and Danielle and Elan and others will be coming alongside you and actually, showing you some ideas, like writing notes, like for a script. Here's a note. Have you thought about doing this in your pitch, or this? And you may re-record your pitch and put it up, and re-record it and put it up, put in other support materials, wherever else. And so in some ways, when you think, wow, competition or whatever, it isn't really that kind of competition. It really is a place in which we are community and trying to help each other just create the best kind of thing that we possibly can produce at this time. So someone who has always sharpened my iron as we move forward through this process with the startup pitches. Danielle's been so helpful in helping us think this through and work this idea out with her huge background in it. So Danielle, would you kind of just talk about, because I love your idea and I'm finding it more and more. Honestly, 20 years ago when we did Soularize, it really was siloed. There was a sense that here were the Christian groups. And even within the Christian silo, I had invited Father Richard Rohr to come to Seattle. And it was one of the first times he'd ever been exposed really to the evangelical kind of world that I was coming out of, and but now you can hardly look at something that, the line is not only blurred, it's disappeared, I think, between his work and the work that we're engaged with, where he was off the unapproved reading list at the time when I was a pastor, But you have now taken this work, especially in kind of the startup world, to be thinking about interfaith as well. Help us understand this conversation too.
Yeah, and first of all, I just want to say that we're so lucky to have Charles in this group, and all of the sort of resources and knowledge that and network that he brings. So that's super exciting. I just want to and actually, Spencer, to your point about the Richard Rohr and those lines. I mean, I'm Catholic, but I kind of grew up in this context of a Catholic family, but sort of participating in the youth activities of a sort of non-denominational evangelical kind of church. And so I was constantly back then towing this line of trying to defend my Catholicism to my evangelical friends and defend hanging out with evangelicals to my Catholic family. And so I know those lines well, and that's just within Christianity, right? Much less beyond. So anyway, so I wanted to just zoom out for a second here first, and then come to the interfaith piece. But I think just to contextualize us, I think in why all of this is so important. And so, I mean, as we all know, right, faith communities have been at the forefront change for eons, right? Through history, from nurturing social movements to building the better part of the social civic infrastructure of this country and elsewhere, to obviously meeting social need at scale, and so all of that is part of our history, and so I think that the challenge now, right, is that as kind of our world and the social problems we face have grown more complex, my sense is that as faith communities, our sort of faith-based approaches to social change have remained largely the same. And so we do service really well, and that's super important. And we do, some do social justice advocacy or activism, which is also super important. And I think that the sort of heart of service and that aspiration of activism really should drive all the social change work we do as faith communities. But I also just feel really deeply that our sort of the changing world that we live in requires us to sort of look at things a bit differently, to look critically at what's working and what's not working, to reframe problems, to shape new narratives, to think of and imagine new solutions, and to collaborate in new ways, basically meaning it requires us to innovate. And I think we haven't been good at that. And so I think there's real, as Spencer was saying, I think there's just real opportunity here. At the same time, of course, a changing world has meant a changing landscape for faith communities, as we all are well aware, in some cases driving sort of existential crises for institutions that are facing declining membership or other issues. And obviously, we all know also that new forms of faith expression and faith community are emerging in that space that we're in now. And those new expressions are going regardless of what the institutions are doing, and so there's certainly new opportunity there as well. But I think for Innofaith, we are sort of based in the belief and the vision that regardless of what form these communities take, new or old, that our ability to thrive as faith communities is really tied to how deeply and effectively we are helping humanity thrive, and our planet. And so I think, again, we're probably all familiar, but we have a lot of challenges, right? In addition to not really adapting well to a changing world and being stuck in some old models of social change, I think also, faith communities are siloed, as Spencer was saying. We're not working together as much as we could be. A lot of the sort of resources and opportunities in this area are sort of specific to one faith tradition. There's certainly some exceptions to this. I will say, for instance, I think in the environmental movement, there is really beautiful, significant interfaith work happening, and some other places. But also not just that we're siloed between faiths, we're just siloed from the secular work that's going on. And so I think that has to change. And then I also think we're not maximizing our assets as faith communities to put into social change work. And so, but we also have so many assets as faith communities in this work. And I think that the greatest, and, I think in the previous call, webinar with Amy and James, there was mention, I think Amy mentioned there was this sort of study done a few years back about the sort of value of religious communities, and how it calculated in a certain way, it exceeds the sort of value of all the top 5 tech companies combined. And so there certainly is this financial and physical assets aspect of this that we have at our disposal. And I think as individual innovators, that's not something to leave behind. To think about the innovation may need to happen outside those institutions, but how do we bring them in a way that helps leverage the assets of those institutions, because those assets are significant. But also, I think the greatest asset we have as faith communities is just our presence, everywhere, in every community, everywhere in the world. I mean, that is sort of an innovator's dream in terms of being on the ground, really understanding and engaging in people's lives and community lives. And that is, that connection to people and to what's happening in their communities is just so key. And I think we need to leverage that more as well. But, but we face sort of like big problems, in our communities, like affordable housing, let's say, right? It was just the big one where I live in Washington, D.C., and it's too big for one congregation to think about. And so what happens is that people kind of come up with sort of ways of addressing in however they can as a local kind of community, soup kitchens, homelessness services, advocacy around specific development projects, things like that. But I don't, we need to do that work, but I also think there's opportunity to go deeper, working together to be able to actually address the problem and the root causes of the problem. And so that's sort of I think, part of this. And then in terms of the interfaith piece, one of the basic principles of social innovation, or any innovation really, right, is getting out of silos, looking for opportunities to collaborate, often with unlikely allies, people we wouldn't have thought to collaborate with, but that brings something to the table. The truth is, just diverse perspectives can help us open new pathways to solutions that we might not have otherwise seen. So I think that's why, to me, the sort of this interfaith perspective is important. I think, as I said, most of our work, with some exceptions, is kind of siloed in our individual traditions. And I think those things that individual faith communities are doing are essential, but it's just that too often we're working separately from each other and from the secular actors who are working on the same problems in the same communities. And so we're fragmenting our impact in a way that I think is problematic. So I believe we have an opportunity to achieve greater impact together while building bridges and basically fortifying pluralism in the process, which I think is also really key. There's a lot of great work around interfaith engagement that's so important. I sit on the board of the Interfaith Council of Metropolitan Washington that's organizes all sorts of interfaith dialogues and so forth, and that work is important. But I think it really kind of where it really comes together is when people work together on shared goals and shared vision for their communities. So I'll just say, like, while you don't obviously need to work across faith lines to bring your idea to Soularize, that's certainly not a requirement. I would just encourage you to think about how you might do that. And as Innofaith, we'll be incentivizing that a little bit, which we'll get to in a minute. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
That's great. Thank you, Danielle. Outstanding. Well, and just as a little example, we run a laboratory over at the church, and we do a burrito breakfast for people on the edge on Saturdays. And just this last Saturday, we're looking for different groups, and just 2 blocks down the street is a Muslim community center that does health screenings, everything else. It's like, yeah, come on down, and it's something we just didn't even have, and they're right next door, so the beauty of really thinking about it, and who knows who's going to be next to put up a service tent, kind of thing. So there is such power, and I am so glad that the landscape has shifted. Now, here's the hard part, is that kind of within Soularize, those shifts can happen real quick, real easy. Doesn't matter to us at all. You know what I mean? No one can shut us down. But there are, denominations. There are publishing groups. There are seminaries. There are, theological frameworks that many times will try to keep you from not doing this, So if Soularize, as Charles kind of said, is that safe place to be able to find that location, find those partners. Here is the crazy thing: the things that we were doing that were quote unquote on the edge, 20 years ago, just seem like normal day today. So what I think is that even if you feel like you're way out on the edge and scary, you'll look back 10 years from now and you go like, that wasn't so bad. You know what I mean? So it'll be worth, breaking out of that silo, even just on a personal level. Honestly, the people who you will meet and the wonderful relationships you develop are far well worth, any kind of, trolling you might get. So, and we'll be in it together anyway. So, we are doing this. It's startup pitches, and we're thinking, wow, well, how is this different than any other, place that you could pitch? Well, it's a little bit, I know the film festival world a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, so you'll do a film, right? A short film, and the short film is never really designed to actually, create a theater production. It's your calling card. You know what I mean? It's a way in which you go to a festival and you want to get exposure and be met and hear and see and find other collaborative partners, right? But within the film festival world, you also can put your project or your film into different categories. So all of a sudden there's one that's on the issue of social justice in the area of human trafficking, let's say. Well, if your film fits that way, you put it in there. But the same film might actually work with empowering women. The film also might work within a religious context. Look, see, there are 1,000 places where it might go and be presented. So we're not looking for you to present just one specific thing here at Soularize, but there is a theme. And we ask that your project works within the theme. So we're not calling for any startup pitch, just throw your things up and let's go. We're actually trying to unite people around the pitch of humane spirituality. Now, it is a theme, but it is a huge theme. It is a wide open theme. And as you've heard, we've been talking that even within Soularize, it's opening our boundaries to the idea of interfaith, to the boundaries of anyone who's thinking in terms of kind of a humane spirituality. And what do we mean by humane spirituality? It really is the idea that in this day and age, I have a hard time understanding what sin is, quite honestly. And I just have given up on that conversation because a lot of my Christian friends will call one thing sin. And I look at it and I go, wow, that seems like just absolute allowing someone to love the person they want to love. You know what I mean? Another person will say, oh no, this thing's sin. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that, we would accelerate, the federal guidelines to, do the death penalty and quickly, take people offline, at the last minute of a presidency. Like, I'm like, wow, like they're just things to me within my world. And again, I'm not trying to argue the politics of it. I was expressing some of my own personal beliefs, right? You'll have your own beliefs. But what I think we come down to is instead of arguing it about sin or political agenda or anything else like that, we actually stop and say, does it feel like it's humane? You know what I mean? We can all, from any religion or non-religion, kind of look at a situation and ask, is there human dignity at the center of that? Or is there not? Is there, and for me, if it steals the sense of dignity from another human being in the world, I think that's sin. You know what I mean? If it restores or empowers or grants or reinforces the human dignity of every human being, I go like, that's got to be good. It's got to be real. So what you're asking is, what's our theme? What's humane spirituality? I think the most spiritual thing to do, the most godly thing to do is to actually allow people to be in the state of human dignity, and that probably is the image of whatever God is, and I think that we steal that image when we steal that away from another human being. And I also believe in the idea of kind of the community. If there is salvation, it's not necessarily one individual. It is really a communal salvation. And I think that if one person is not free or does not have human dignity, we all have suffered in some way. And so it's not just one person's human dignity. It is to bring human dignity to all in our projects. And so in that way, that is our theme. That is what we want to hold as the kind of the idea. So if you have a project and it in any way touches on this idea, then it's go, it's good. make it happen. If it's, okay, I've got a great new Bitcoin mining thing and I'm going to make $1 billion. And, I'm like, there's probably another film festival for you. Okay. Like you'll find another pitch place for that. But for us, no matter how large or how small it is, the other part that we've been talking about is that we realize, pardon me, that there are different levels of pitches that will come to the contest. All right. So we understand that there are going to be people that are at such a level that they've perfected their game. They've kind of gone through the idea of whatever canvas you use to create your idea. Then you've gone all the way through kind of Elan's project with a startup deal through the Glean Network, and you've gone with the pitches and you're set and you're looking for certain round of funding. That's welcome, totally welcome, but we also want to make sure that there may be a young group of people in a faith community or even in a co-working space or whatever that just has an idea and they just want to test the idea. So every level between, just idea to the idea of researching it, to prototyping it, to finding your funding, all of those levels. And in fact, when you apply, you'll check where you think you are at the time of applying. So we want you to know that all projects are welcome within the theme of humane spirituality. So we also are open to any questions. So we're going to have a question time in a moment too. But if there was anything that you guys had at this point, what I'm going to jump in is on kind of the how-tos, how to apply, how to. So if there, but I also want you to know anytime you can jump in and throw a question, especially when we're kind of doing the how-to stuff.
Yeah. Spencer, do you think maybe we should open for some Q&A because both Danielle and Charles said a lot of heavy things.
Yes,
Does
absolutely. Let's do that.
Have any comments before we get into the how-to? I know, Melon, you brought something up about interfaith versus interspiritual. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
I so appreciate being here, and thank you to everyone for creating such a wonderful gathering together. What appeals to me about interspirituality and that whole movement is that it gets us out of the building or the congregation or the sangha or whatever, and it really focuses on practice, not dogma. So and practice is just so human. It's what you do in your body, what you do with other people, how you breathe, how you sit, how you walk in nature, how you pray, so, and especially when we think about the younger folks who are not at all drawn to faith communities for good reasons, they're into spirituality and interspirituality. And so to really help us reach out of our little places, I think the interspiritual lens can really widen our understanding. So yeah, I think this is great work, and I'm really appreciate everyone who's doing it.
Yeah, no, I think the project resonates with that. I love that distinction. I mean, it's fascinating how every day we're evolving our language and our understanding. And I think that captures it as well, very well. I like that. Thank you.
I just put 2 references in the chat if anybody wants to follow, if that's a new term to you. This is one of the books, The Interspiritual Age.
Okay.
Which is really quite fabulous. And that, I don't know if you know the magazine Elixir. They had an entire issue on interspirituality in 2005. So it's an old idea. Yes. The time has come. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's wonderful. Any other questions or even comments?
I mean, I kind of was interested in somebody talking. I saw a lot of heads nodding when Charles was talking about what is it? The dedication, the self-sacrifice it takes to take an idea to fruition. Anybody relate to that? James, I saw your head moving. You got to say something.
Well, thanks. Thanks for making this space. I want to say thanks for the chance to be among kindred spirits. I feel like I guess at a certain point we get to introduce ourselves, but I want to first say greetings to Reverend Dr. Paula Ferris over at Fullerton first. I recently quit my full-time job with the United Methodist Church. I used to work for one of our regional headquarters because I realized that there is no other time like this that's going to come again in my lifetime. And my spouse and I, we've been planning for a while now, but basically without any kind of venture capital or anything like that, or even a friends and family round of like super wealthy friends and family, took out our my retirement savings in order to stay afloat for this time and to be able to make pitches like this. And so I think the commitment is towards the moment, I feel like, and what is my role in the moment, and in a context where often I felt like I'm going to dedicate my life, around 15% of which of my efforts are going to be towards something that I feel like is me. The other part is helping maintain things versus where I feel like I'm at 100% of what I feel like is me. It's just 100% reduction in salary, but that's all right for a little while until until we'll see what happens. But yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Thank you for your bravery. I love it. Any other statements or questions?
So we're newly retired. Doug, Anna Balfour.
Hi.
And kind of like some of my background has been in the kind of like the international development and philanthropic kind of like spaces. So I was relating to what Charles was saying around family offices and wealth transfer and all that type of stuff. And I was also really connecting with what Danielle was talking about in terms of some of the opportunities of, you know, faith communities and what they can actually achieve around the world. So, you know, one of the points that is often made is that at least half the healthcare of Africa actually comes from, you know, faith communities, and so often secular, you know, authorities find that difficult to actually cope with and don't know how to connect to it. And actually the Christian and other faith communities don't know how to connect to the UN and all that type of stuff. So I played in that space, and we also created a project called the Micah Challenge that I hoped was going to mobilize evangelical communities around the world to want to practically reach out and also design some decent, you know, kind of like innovative projects, and kind of like, I think probably beat my head across against the brick wall for a very long period of time before realizing that there was so much entrenched opposition just to moving anywhere.
That was actually why we were in England.
Yeah, that was,
now we're in the States now.
So we've moved to the US. We're kind of 6 months into sort of retirement, and we're probably come into the category of Spencer's people that are looking for good ideas and looking for something to fundamentally do that can bring impact, interested in the interfaith, interspiritual kind of like dimension.
Yeah, and the personal journey. I'm a clinical psychologist by background, so my heart goes out to James. You know, you've let yourself go, and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's the safety net?
Step. Yeah.
So that's us. We had a few ideas, but
which is why we got connected to Spencer, and he said jump on the call.
Yeah. But it is really interesting to actually hear, and I've been through an ideation course, Charles, you know, in a previous life in a company, and very good, really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm glad to see you guys on the call. That's great. And I hope you jump into the pitch. All right. Thank you. Anyone else want to just chime in where you're at? And yeah. This is great. This is wonderful. This is community, by the way.
And Spencer, sorry if I can just jump in or just to respond to, I think this is a huge challenge that we've seen, any of us working with innovators in the faith space, right? That the institutions, and that's why we're seeing a lot of innovation outside of the institutions, because people are finding it so difficult inside. And I do think, the first time I talked to Spencer a few years ago was, as you mentioned, I was helping sort of in a role at Ashoka map kind of what the innovation dynamics are in the US faith sector. And I've shared this with some of you, but there were two kind of questions that people, sort of rhetorical questions that people posed in the course of my conversations, that I think sort of pinned down these sort of two threads of innovation. One question, which may have been from Elan, I can't remember now, but was, does the synagogue need to be the center of Jewish life? And that was sort of indicative of this thread of innovation, of people moving out of the institutions and developing new things kind of outside of them. And then somebody else said to me, why isn't the church the center of world transformation? And it sort of, it kind of centered this question around or thread of innovation of folks trying to bring innovation into the institutions. And I really just want to say, I think both are super important. Because like I said, I'm really interested in all the assets that our communities have built up over thousands of years, that I think the folks operating outside the institutions are having a hard time sort of then accessing. And that's a lot of resources there, and wisdom, and connections and networks and presence in communities around the world that I think we don't want to lose. So I think both threads of innovation are critical.
Love that. Yeah. Anyone else? A question or comment, or even just to introduce yourself?
I'll introduce myself. Like James, I also left the church ministry world last year to start something new. And I'm really interested in Soularize just because of the opportunity to connect and network and have a kind of a curated conversation. I think over the past year, I've had conversations with like dozens, probably hundreds of people. I think the hardest part is finding the right conversations and figuring out how to curate the conversation more, which is why I'm interested in this and interested to see how things develop. And so thanks, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Eugene. Yeah, Eugene has got 2 feet in the barrel with us. He's hosting a village, and then also as a project coming up. So I'm very excited about that. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Anyone else want to just say hi? Yeah, go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Carol Barshow, and I'm calling in, I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I was introduced to this group by Reverend Mellon, who we've been working together in a project with the congregation that Mellon serves up in Vermont. And I'm currently a seminary student at Boston University School of Theology, and I'm pursuing ordination in the Unitarian Universalist denomination. And I have so much interest in entrepreneurial ministry, and I am excited to make more connections with folks that are doing that. And I feel like one of the most important lessons I've learned through being part of the Unitarian Universalist world is those interfaith connections. And I think that is where my denomination has been doing its best work, and has been doing its work with the most social impact, particularly around areas of activism and like collaborative organizing. As a denomination, we just recently had a lot of success with partnering with organizations to get out the vote. And that was a big effort happening nationally. And, we're a denomination that operates with a congregational polity. So we also have a lot of assets that are tied up in our individual brick and mortar churches. So I'm really interested in like some of those big questions about like, how do we get that how do we get those, how do we maximize those assets, and how do we use that to kind of like move this denomination into where it might be going next. Also have a big interest in like trauma responsive and trauma informed work, and wondering where we could go with that for entrepreneurial ministries. So yeah, I'm just soaking it all in. Glad to be here.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. It's, you know, it's interesting how it's probably not possible to do one work without the other. You know what I mean? Like the more and more I've been listening to the projects and ideas, there is not just the doing part, but the thinking part. You know, how does it affect us? And Charles was saying the other day in a call that, you know, we need to not only care for the technical pitch, but, you know, how are we as people in that way? And I know that's a part of everyone's work, but here especially, we don't want to miss out. And I'm excited to hear any projects that are especially touching on those kinds of things. That I love that. Anyone else before we move on to the next part might want to say hi? Yeah. Okay. All
Okay,
right.
we got to talk about the how-to and the prizes.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, the how-to. Let me do a quick little screen share for you. And this is the Soularize site itself. Everybody see this? Yeah, can you see my screen? Just want to make sure. Shayna, can you see my screen?
Yeah, and I'm going
Okay.
to put it in I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, okay. So again, soularize.live is where we're at. And you can see across the top all the different ways in which people can participate. You can go through the site or help people see it. You know, we've got the workshops, we've got startups, we've got arts, villages, you know, so a lot of different ways for people to participate. It is both online and also in villages. And so your startup pitch may be selected to be part of our program, or it might be part of another village might select to view it. And also the other side is that people will be able to engage with it, even if it doesn't become part of the final program. So what you do is you just go up here, you hit startups, and with the startups, then you'll see here, it's like submit your pitch, right? You can find out a little bit more information about our panelists here. So Elan and Charles and Danielle, who are with us now. And so you could just click apply now. It'll take you right here to this section, and you'll be able to submit your pitch. Really, this is all you need to do is the name of the project, just the idea, some basic information. And then we want you to know that if you're approved, to set up your pitch page. It is $19.95. There's no cost to apply though. And we're not really screening them for the quality of the idea. We're basically screening to make sure that they fit within kind of the community guidelines and the theme of humane spirituality. So it's free to be able to submit and very simple. I mean, you click and here's just the quick idea. I mean, it's that easy. And then if you are selected, you would do the pass to be able to get this. So again, no extra cost. And the reason why we have a pass is because we want to make sure that we have a private community. I ran a website years ago called theooze.com, and it was open and everything else, and it worked out great. But within 7 years, trolls and flamers just came in and just kind of destroyed the conversation. So the $20 really is the low bar of entry to have people come in. And if anybody breaks community guidelines, we'll just simply refund their money and ban their IP. You know, so that's basically, you know, not an entry fee because everybody pays $20 to be in it. And you don't have to risk anything to submit. Then once you are accepted, we will
So
give
what
you.
happens, like, just so everyone knows, basically once you apply, we get that automatic email, and then within 5 days, we're going to let you know, yes. And then there'll be instructions to say, okay, go over here, buy the app, and then we send you a special link.
Yes. And then you'll create your own pitch page. So, and it's very simple. So as you look in here, you can look under agenda, and you can look under pitch gallery, and you could look under, so here is a pitch for arts. And so Barry has his you're going to have your name, you're going to have your link and whatever. You'll have a description of it. You could put up photos, you could put up PDFs or whatever else. Plus, you're able to contact each other. And this is the idea of the community. And for you with a startup, instead of a photo here, you would have your startup video pitch. And we'll have some examples and some other things that'll be in there as well. So the idea is that within this community, we're not trying to control anything. What we really want to do is have the ability for you to create what it is that you would like to present in a pitch. So it'll be a video. The other thing we want you to know is we're not trying to own anything. So all of the pitches will be put up on your website, YouTube, Vimeo, wherever, and however you do it. If you don't have one of those channels, there is the possibility that we could host it on the Soularize YouTube channel if you need that. But the reason why we want it to be posted on your channel is because we want to send people your way. We want people to know about what you're doing. And then the other part is that we'll link to that in the app. So really the app is not where the content is, it's where the conversation is. Do you see what I'm saying? So that part is private. No one will be able to engage in the conversation with you and your material except those on the app or on the website of Soularize. Now, all of your comments for YouTube and everything else, that'll all still be there. But the idea is we're not trying to lock anything down. We're simply trying to support you in a private community that allows you to connect and listen and see. So that's the basic idea, the process of how to apply. And now Shayna's going to help us understand how we can support you through some prizes.
Awesome. So really wonderful that we are able to announce $5,000 in cash awards for startup initiatives that are working across lines of faith or spirituality to address social challenges. So that's thanks to Innofaith, and so there's some money there. We also have some subsidized spots to the Glean Network Start Fellowship, and those are worth about $1,500 a piece. So those two startup fellowship scholarships, if you will be awarded. We also think we're going to be gathering a little bit more funds and potentially some other scholarships from other organizations. So out of all the different activities within Soularize, we feel like the startup initiatives really is gaining a lot of energy, and we really think that this is going to be a great place. If you have ideas, you're going to really get a lot of support, peer reviews, wisdom from our advisors. It's too bad Elan couldn't be here right now too, but their hearts are for everyone to come up with good ideas.
And we want you to understand that the quote prizes are really designed for supporting you. So like with the Glean Network, they are helping people who kind of have an idea, but they're going to move towards pitch, right? And it's with Columbia Business School. It's 12 weeks. It's an amazing program. But if someone has just an idea and they're not quite ready for that, we wouldn't burden somebody with that prize, you know what I mean? Or if somebody is way outside and they're in their second seed money funding, they'd almost be insulted if we gave them that, you know what I mean? Because they're like, wait, how am I going to use that? Can I give that to a friend? So do you understand? We're not trying to do prizes for the best of show, but what we're really trying to do is say, with the people who we're in relationship, how can we support you in connecting you in that way? And so that's going to be the power and the value of that. But we also would like to bring 3 of the pitches to the main stage. So we are looking to try to help develop your pitch as you move forward to the point where we haven't decided exactly the date or time, but it'll be between October 21st and 22nd in Fullerton. And if you're nearby there, or if you're willing to come on out, we'll give you a free pass and everything. We can't house you or anything, but we can make sure that you could be on the stage presenting. And even if you can't be there physically, because some people will be around the world, we would make sure that they do their pitch through video. So that's a way in which you get a larger support. So, and the other thing we're thinking about doing, this might be silly, but I don't know, but for those who are accepted into the projects, we're looking at doing like the little Pomodoro thing, like the little palm leaf thing, but it's like official selection of Soularize pitch contest that you could put anywhere you want and even in your bio. And to this day, I am surprised at how many people still have in their bio, they wrote an article on the ooze. You know what I mean? Like, it's so interesting. But we hope over the next few years that literally selected as a pioneer or founder in the startup pitch contest may be a sense of pride for you over the years. So we are so excited and so thankful. We'll stick around for a minute with some Q&A, but in a moment, we're going to turn off the recording. But thank you all for coming and staying. And again, we so appreciate it. Go to soularize.live and click on the startup pitches, and we look forward to seeing you there.